All right, now let's get into some football. We're also going to look at one of the better basketball games on Saturday as well. But don't forget there's a basketball edition of Proline, so make sure and check that out. The Broncos playing host to the Patriots. It's played out according to the script, and I'm not suggesting it's scripted, but you've got the two best teams in the AFC are matching up. It's another epic meeting between Brady and Manning. The first one was a classic as the Broncos roll out to what looks like it's going to be just a complete blowout in Foxborough, and the Patriots come back with one of the more spectacular rallies I've ever seen, really, and end up winning the football game. So, John, what happens in the rematch?
Well, this is fascinating from sort of a chess point of view. What are the strategies we're going to see? I have no doubt what Denver's going to do on offense. Peyton Manning runs the offense. He's the offensive coordinator, really. He's going to go no huddle and throw every down. The question, though, is what is Bill Belichick going to do? This is the fascinating part of it. And historically, he has played Peyton Manning with deep safeties, nickel, all about playing pass defense. Sometimes he rushes 3 guys. I've seen him even rush just 2 guys and have 8 and 9 back in the secondary. So when you look at the earlier meeting that was a 34-31 overtime game, Denver had 48 rushes in the game for 280 yards. That's because Belichick was playing those deep safeties, saying, go ahead, Peyton, I dare you to run. In fact, through 3.5 quarters, Manning had only 73 passing yards, which is just astounding. So I suspect Belichick is going to play the deep zone defense, not going to blitz very much. He's going to ask the secondaries and the safeties, do not get beat deep. And the thing, though, for the Pats that I see is quite a few weaknesses. First of all, they haven't been a good road team. They're 4-4 straight up, 2-6 against the spread. And I kind of believe that Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator of Denver, his game plan might be, I want Tom Brady to beat me, which we've never seen, because their wide receiving core isn't really very good. They don't have Gronk. They could use a guy like Aaron Dobson. I know he's a rookie, but he's big and fast. Probably not going to have him with that foot injury. So really, they got 2 slot guys. And what we saw Del Rio do against the Chargers was stack the line on first and second down, blitz a lot, try and take away the run. I got to believe, Jim, he's going to kind of do that. It may keep this game a little bit scoring.
Your analysis, John, was excellent. It is a chess match. I mean, Brady against Manning has been, it's classic. It goes back, 15 years or so they've been doing this. First, number 1 in passing, 340 yards a game, that's Manning. Brady, a little bit more balanced. They're 10th in passing and 9th in rushing, where Broncos are 15th in rushing. But, both teams can run the ball. Both teams can throw the ball. Obviously, Manning has more offensive weapons since basically the Patriots lost so many to either jail or injuries. This is a classic chess match, and I think I know what to expect. I think what your analysis was absolutely correct. They're not gonna let Manning sit back there and kill him deep with all the weapons that he has. So they have to play very defensive. But part of playing defense is what San Diego did against Manning a few weeks ago, not this past week, but a few weeks ago, when they were able to keep Manning on the sidelines. And that, I feel, has to be the case here for the Patriots. I don't think the Patriots can go into Denver and just go into a high scoring. They don't have the weapons that they can do that on the road. And they have not been as successful on the road this year. Although they played very well at Carolina, which was probably the best team they played on the road this year. And that was the controversy at the end, where the guy threw the flag and then picked it up with no explanation. So, you have some great coaching here. Belichick is a master, and they have gone head-to-head with Manning teams before and done pretty well. So you got Brady Belichick, and I don't know what number this is, but it's maybe Brady Belichick number 1001, and it's going to be a classic matchup. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm not really going to give away anything on this game in terms of what I'm going to do, because that's what clients are paying for. It's not really fair to them, and I will be involved in this game. But one thing I will say is this: as there's more and more information out there on the internet, you can follow what's happening with a good line screen, and also on Twitter and things like that. More and more people are getting caught up in trying to figure out where the sharp money is as opposed to the square money. there's not that much of a difference in terms of wins and losses between sharps and squares. Okay, it's interesting only from the standpoint of which side wins, if there is a battleground on these games. And I can tell you right now, by the way, the squares, the dummies, the so-called dummies, and I put that in quotes because I hate air quotes, but I'm going to use them here because they're not dummies. It's just a different opinion. They're doing better than the sharps. Okay, take that for what it's worth. They just are, and it's been fairly consistent down the stretch. So the only piece of advice I can give you is if you are going to make a play on this game based on your perception of who's betting what, it's just really not a very good way to handicap. You got to learn to break the games down. If you're gonna handicap on your own and not use somebody else's selections like ours, you got to learn to break the games down by yourself and come up with your own opinion and bet that opinion and not get swayed off it by this so-called sharps versus squares thing that's taking place. I think it's another great thing for the odds for the bookmakers. It's increasing their action. As people get involved in this, they want to bet more money because they want to follow the sharps. And all it does is pad the bookmakers' bottom line. And the books are sitting back there and smiling every second of it. Not to say that there's not some true sharp money out there, but I think what we're seeing is a lot of misinformation. Jim, I know you can address this too. I think it's a lot of misinformation and that it's not necessarily a true sharp side versus a true square side. I think a lot of that's phony. People just getting caught up in this on Twitter and on various forums and thinking they know where the sharp money is, and they really don't.
Well, Dave, you brought there's so many ways to, what is a sharp player? I mean, there's a lot of old timers out there they were sharps when there was no information out there, when people were just going by the seat of their pants. And they were the sharps because they did a little bit more work, and the squares were doing mostly seat of the pants betting. Today it's so much different with the internet. There's so much stuff, analytics and all that stuff out there that people, I mean, let's take a look at this game, and I'll give you a little bit of a way to look at this. You go back to John Cranton's analysis of the game and how it was going to be played out. If the Patriots run the ball and control the ball, they have smaller receivers now, and there are a lot of underneath. They got LeGarrette Blount. They got a running game. If they control the ball like that, it's a different situation. Now Denver has got to try to figure out how to stop that without letting too much stuff get down the field where one of these guys can break loose for a big pass. That's a very difficult. This is where a balanced offense creates problems for defensive people. Now, the Broncos don't have the greatest defense in the world. Neither one of these teams have the greatest defense in the world. Those great defenses are up in Seattle this weekend playing. Now, if they do that, and the Patriots ran the ball, or not, the Broncos ran the ball last week against San Diego, but San Diego was a different team too, and they kind of self-destructed. They had a lot of injuries, made some mistakes. But be that as it may, if this is a running game, if the Broncos try to run the ball, and the Patriots try to run the ball, and they back off the Brady Manning thing and become balanced offenses, I want you to look at something. The line opened 54.5 and it's 55.5.
Right.
What happens when you throw the ball and they're completed and you go out of bounds, the clock stops. When they're not completed, the ball hits the ground and the clock stops. Now, but when you run the ball and you stay in bounds, the clock runs. And they do only play a certain amount of minutes unless it goes overtime. So when you start thinking about, if you can, this is what I do 24 hours a day. So believe me, I sleep this stuff. I try to figure out, just like a horse race, where's the pace, who's taking the lead, who's coming off the pace, this kind of thing, the same thing. Now, when you analyze and you think you know, you don't really 100% know because coaches can change their attitudes. But if you think you know how the game is going to be played in styles, then the total becomes rather easy to win because you can tell if the odds maker is just going by numbers, and they're not going by how the pace was. They're looking at these two teams as being over teams. That's why you're looking at 55.5. They change it up and they run the ball 40 times and throw it 15 or 18 or 20. You're going to see a much lower score unless every time they throw it, they or, they score every time. I don't think that's going to happen. Now, I'm just saying, if they come out passing the 55.5, they're going to fly over the total because the weather's good. This is where you have to do some damn work. And forget, like Dave said, the sharps and the squares and all that. The squares are not as square as they used to be.
That's right.
Ask any bookmaker what their hold percentage is now versus 5 years ago. They used to look at 7, 8, 9% hold percentage in the NFL. Now they're looking at 3.5 and 4. Why? Because the squares are sharper than they used to be.